Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition and we turn now to poem 528, Mine by the Right of the White Election. Another one of these, what some scholars have called the I poems. It is possibly another Sam Boyle's poem, we're not completely sure. When published in 1890, it was actually called Mine, which makes sense because 6 times out of the 8 lines the word mine is used, and 6 times out of the 8 lines we have exclamation points. Some have seen this as Emily's most powerful single statement of the don't tell me what to do independent spirit that will proclaim her decision to be a poet. In many ways we're back to 325. Do you guys remember this? Of tribulation, these are they denoted by the white, the spangled gowns a lesser rank of victors designate. All these did conquer, but the ones who overcame most times wear nothing commoner than snow, no ornament but palms. Surrender is a sort unknown on this superior soil. Defeat, an outgrown anguish, remembered as the mile our panting ankle barely passed when night devoured the road, and we stood whispering in the house, and all we said was, saved. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net down that left-hand side, chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked through our set of previous introductory comments as well as the prior 527 poems. We just finished with 527 to put this roll down. Now, one of the serious questions of this poem is its tone, because different readers have had a different view of the tone, how you read this poem. For example, one is this is a triumphant, kind of almost like ecstatic, a really happy kind of tone. Others have seen it rather as maybe more antagonistic, maybe even a little bit greedy, and even a sense of desperation. Now, we should point out what we've already said. Emily never had a conversion experience. It was one of the things that haunted her, it seems, for much of her poetic life. The idea that she never could quite fully commit to the Christian evangelical community that she was raised in. Of course, this notion of the white election will take us to her study of Revelation. We've already said that's her favorite book in the Bible. But the question might be here, is Emily really talking about her poetic gift? Many scholars point out, we are right in the middle of what is often referred to as her flood creativity. And in that regards, it seems as if, now, this poem probably should be read ecstatically. I'll let you decide how you read it. She says it this way: mine by the right of the white election, mine by the royal seal, mine by the sign in the scarlet prison bars cannot conceal, mine here in vision and in veto, mine by the grave's repeal, titled, confirmed, delirious charter, mine, long as ages steal. Now, I have a hard time reading this as a lugubrious or sad or mournful statement, or even a disgruntled statement or an uncertain statement, because of all the exclamation points that are here. Now, notice the power of the dash. You'll see it. Mine dash, mine dash. Do you see it? The 6 times that mine gets used, the dash will follow. And then by the right, notice capitalized, of the white election. Again, this idea that we're back to poem 325, as we said. Of course, Revelation 20 comes to mind, especially verses 11 through 15, no doubt. You'll also remember white election from our study of 271. The white election. Now, whatever that is, again, remembering that Emily wore white exclusively almost at the end of her life. Maybe she was making the decision that her poetry and her poetic enterprise would be the thing that she would devote her life to. Notice the next line, by the royal seal. We're back to Revelation here, of course, it's 6. Mine by the sign in the scarlet prison. You'll remember scarlet from the Scarlet Way from the previous poem, 527. And many have seen those 2 poems read together. Whatever it is that's the scarlet prison, again, the idea that blood must be spilt for one to find one's passion. In other words, the energy is what she called it in the last poem, the only time she would have used the word. Here, we experience the energy, right? She used the word in the previous poem. Bars can't conceal. In other words, There isn't any way to keep what is about to transform here or happen. Bars can't keep it. You can't put it in a prison, in other words. Mine, notice the second part now, dash, here, making it immediate, in vision and in veto. Now, many have said this is the choosing, but for every choice there is an unchoosing as well. She is choosing a certain kind of election. What is that election is obviously the question. Mine, by the grave's repeal. Now, we're going to get to this long as ages steal here in a little bit. In other words, the quest for maybe some kind of poetic immortality, titled, takes us back to sign. Confirmed takes us to the idea that there is a certain kind of confirmation. Is this a religious confirmation? Many argue probably not. Delirious takes us back to our study of 237, you'll remember. Delirious charter, exclamation point. In other words, this is the choice that she's made. Many have read this poem as Emily's conversion experience, only it's not a conversion to a religious experience, but rather to a poetic experience. Mine, one last time, long as ages steal. You'll remember that when we read 508 and we studied 508, she said it this way, sounding very similar. I'm seated. I've stopped being theirs. The name they dropped upon my face with water in the country church is finished using now. And they can put it with my dolls, my childhood, and the string of spools I've finished threading too. Baptized before without the choice, but this time consciously of grace. Unto supremest name. Called to my full, the crescent dropped, existence whole arc filled up with one small diadem. My second rank, too small the first, crowned, crowing on my father's breast, a half unconscious queen, but this time adequate, erect, with will to choose or to reject, and I choose just to crown. Notice in this poem it's to reject, and in the poem that we're studying right now, it's veto. Now, what are we going to do with a poem like this at 2A? I think she's arguing that great artists, and especially she would consider herself the poet, for a great artist, it's always a personal choice, and it is the choice that must be mine. At 2B, well, obviously the question is, who is the speaker arguing with in this poem? You notice, you kind of have a sense that there's an argument going on. Is she arguing with deity? Is she arguing with a community? To whom is she making all of these references? And then, as well at 2B, all of the assonants here, mine by right, white, mine by sign, scarlet, bars, the alliteration of right, royal, repeal, sign, seal, sign, scarlet, steel, cannot, conceal, confirmed, and then of course vision and veto. And then here are the consonants as well, when you guys go back to read this again. Right, white, royal, seal, sign, prison, mine, in, vision, and in. And then of course the musical echoes here. Beautiful the way she's constructed this. At 3A, well, I think 1072, let's read it one more time, because we're going to come back to it in our study. And I think it makes sense. Title divine is mine, the wife without the sign, acute degree conferred on me, empress of Calvary, royal, all but the crown, betrothed without the swoon. God sends us women when you hold garnet to garnet, gold to gold, born, bridled, shrouded, in a day try victory. My husband, women say, stroking the melody. Is this the way? Now, when we hit 1072, we'll have to come back, obviously, to this poem to try and see if we can connect it in some way. Finally, at 3B, what was a time when you gave yourself to a project and you called it mine? I hope your study of Emily's poetry is that. Thank you.